The signal from the tone arm on the turntable is being fed into the tape in inputs on this Bell amplifier right here. This is a 1954 Bell amplifier I restored several years ago. And then we also are feeding the signal from the tape out into the tape recorder. So that's how we're going to get the audio signal from the turntable into the tape recorder. Alright, I've got the Tonearm hook back up to the hooked up to the amplifier, and let's check that real quick and make sure that signal's getting through. Alright, I've got the tape out from the amplifier plugged into the tape recorder here. This is a Voice of Music Model 700. It was built in April 1955, and I just finished putting it back together. Recapped the amplifier, put all new belts and idler wheel and capstan drive wheel. So it's still a little noisy, the motor is, but it works real well. Just so you know, unfortunately my setup here is very cramped and I can't get the camera around to show you the side here, but there's two inputs down here, and one is for a magnetic photo input and the other is for a microphone, radio, or a ceramic or crystal phono input. So if I had a different turntable, I could just tape directly from the turntable, and I have done that with this, but I wanted to use this particular machine for this demonstration, and that's why we're having to route it through the amplifier. Now there's some things about the VM700 that you should be aware of. This button in the middle is a stop button, and when you put this recorder away, it always has to be engaged. In fact, you can't put the lid on unless it's pushed in. And if you have a recorder like this and you're missing the lid, be sure and push the stop button in. The reason for that is that it keeps the idler wheel from developing a flat spot when you're storing the tape recorder for long periods of time. Also, one other thing, I don't know if you can see it. But there's a chassis screw right here that holds the chassis, one of the screws that holds the chassis in. I've mounted a little spade lug behind that screw, and if you're using a turntable that has a ground wire, you can clip it to that little spade lug, or I can, and that will cut out hum from the motor of a turntable. So I just did that as a convenience. There are other ways you could do it, but it works real well when I've tried it. We're not going to be needing that today because we're running through the amplifier, as I pointed out before. So the next thing that we want to do is load the tape from the feed spool onto the take-up reel. Now the manual tells you to push this stop button in and thread your machine. That's actually wrong. The reason it is that these brakes don't let these reels turn, and you need to be able to turn the reels to thread it. So when you're threading it, just push any button and release that. And then you can just take a length of tape. Now right here is what they call a magic wand or something. It's a little plastic thing. You have to get the tape in front of that and down in front of it, because if you don't, the motor won't turn. So we've got it there. And we'll bring this around. And we'll wind a couple loops of tape. Let's see, now that's just slipped out, so I got to get that back down in there. I've only had this thing working for a couple days, and it's been probably 40 years since I've used a tape recorder, so getting back into the swing of things here is taking a little time. Okay, there we go. Now, we're ready to go. We've got to push the stop button back down again. And the reason for that is that when that stop button is not engaged, it blocks these other buttons from being pushed. So there's no way to start recording or playback or fast forward or rewind unless you begin with that down first. Now, another thing that this recorder has, very convenient for taping, is a pause brake. And so what we want to do is engage that pause brake, push it out until it engages, and then to record, which is what we want to do now, there's a little safety switch right here to prevent accidentally recording. So you push that in, and this is the record button, and I push that in, and now the machine is queued up, ready to start taping. So the record level, you don't have a very good indicator. You've got a little neon light over here that's supposed to flash if you're getting distortion, and I haven't found it too reliable. There's also a red ready light that comes on when you push the recording so that you know that you're in record mode. What I've done is just experimented, and I don't know if you can see it from there. I'll add a close-up, but I've added a actual scale so that I have some reference point when I'm setting this volume knob, because the volume knob and the record level are the same, use the same knob. Over here is your that's your treble adjustment, and this is your bass response here, the lower one. And then here you have a counter, and so we're going to reset that to 0. We've got 0 and 0. Okay, so we're there at 0 everywhere. So we're ready to start. Now the other thing that you probably want to do, this is a monitor switch, and this lets you monitor your recording through the tape recorder. When I start playing this record, you would hear it like you did before through the amplifier, but I want to hear it through here so I can kind of get a sense of how loud it is, and I'll also be watching the little distort button there. But I know about where to set this because I have already recorded the other side of the tape and got some experience. So what we're ready to do now is go ahead and start this and record, and then we'll start the machine at the same time. Okay, I'm not getting any distortion signal there. Okay, we'll let a little bit of this record. Okay, I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try to show you the record and the distort lights. The recording indicator light is on, as you can see, because I do have the record button engaged, although I'm not actually recording on tape. And over here is the distort light, so as I turn this knob up, you may be able to see when it reaches distortion, the lights begin to flicker. You never knew when fortune smiled upon you. Now you saw it all was never. I don't know if you can see it now or not. Never thought the day would come I'd say goodbye. Now I left you all. All right, not sure if you were able to see that, but it does work. Okay, we're about near the end. So what I'll do is I'll pause the tape and then take the tone arm off the record. Now I paused it, which means that if I wanted to record another record or flip that one over, record the B side, I could do that and then just release the pause brake again and it would start recording. But since we want to go back and see whether this recorded okay, I'm actually going to push stop, and then I'm going to push rewind. Whoops, got the brake on here. All right. One of the things that I learned about these tape recorders years ago was on the rewind and fast forward, sometimes one reel will get going pretty fast, so it doesn't hurt to kind of keep a finger or a thumb is on the freewheeling one to keep it from not outrunning the motor. Okay, now we want to see if we got anything recorded here. There we go. So we've seen record. To record, you have to push this little safety button, push it down. We've seen the rewind. The fast forward is this one button over here. And then always make sure that you have the stop button in before you do any other function, otherwise this locks these buttons. So now we can rewind. I'm going to keep that from going a little too far. There we go. Okay. And that's it. And then you leave that down. You turn it off over here with your treble control. And now we're shut off.